Hello, and welcome to the Prismatic Congress. It is Sunday, the 26th of January, 2200 hours, and this is the Prismatic Congress, a broadcast by the Prismatic Imperium based in Cubio, an active player group that makes up part of the Ashling Duval community and specializes in roleplay. Today, this is Lord Warden Mistler speaking, and I am very happy to be hosting a special episode today because it is our first episode that has a special guest. We have Captain Flint here for the for Ashling's Angels. But before we get to that, and our topic today, we will of course cover our news sections. First of all, general news. We've been talking about the January update last episode, and as we had the information back then, there was a follow-up patch. It was the January update patch 2. It addressed a few issues that arose from the initial January update. Most notably, it fixed the combat zones, the conflict zones that had the bug that the victory progress tracker disappeared, and that basically made conflict zones almost incompletable, especially at higher levels. So that patch arrived, and we're happy that Frontier is working on it. In terms of future updates, we will stay tuned. So much for the general elite news. Let's head over into our branch news. First of all, branch of Vigor. For the branch of Vigor, our BGS control has to offer the news. We have not only entered, I forgot if I announced this last episode or not, but we had entered the HIP 118079 system, and thanks to quick work from our commanders, we have entered a control war there very quickly, and that is almost due to be over and won. We didn't see much opposition there. It went slowly but well for us, and I expect this control war to end with a tick tomorrow, I think, or the day after that. But I expect that control war to end perfectly well for us, and for the Adamantine Union to take its 21st system that it controls. As always, keep your eyes on our mission board. We will have follow-up missions there to stabilize our influence once the war is over. And we also have other activities that you can do currently. Always keep your eyes on the objectives. I will update them as soon as possible and whenever I have new information. Now over to the branch of Sight and Lord Master Techeron.
So, after my carrier got shot down a few weeks ago, I decided to have a look at my fleet again, and now I'm in the middle of an engineering run that includes my entire fleet. So I have left my office, and I'm pretty much not to be found anywhere soon emerald in the next days. But that doesn't stop me from getting the latest branch of Sight news directly to you. I'm pleased to announce that the teaser I gave last week about the incoming Sight expedition will have its conclusion right now. The next target for the spring expedition will be the Bubble Nebula. A nebula I've not been before. I really want to see. And because it has such a nice blue color like the Arcana Star, we definitely need to check it out. So yeah, there you have it. The Bubble Nebula will be our first goal for this year. I don't have a cartographic map ready yet, so I'm not sure which destinations we might visit on the way, but I'll tell you soon enough. Other than that, if you can remember from the last week, I said something about Drew Vaga having an in-game lore tour. Well, he posted some more information about it. There are gonna be around 10 different stations, not at the same day, but spread out to an entire month or two, I think. It also includes Arcana, the Sol system, Lave, and many others, also previously important systems from the other games. You need at least 20 light years of jump range and an SRV, and it can be held in open, private, or solo. But I really want to try and get into his private group and meet him directly. Well, that has been everything from us. Let's see what Mind's going to do now.
Hello, it is I, your favorite person, the Lord Harold, host of uh the Good Morning Cubio. Right, that one, and many others. So it's been an exciting week, particularly yesterday. So I'm going to start with the progress we've had in the roleplay. Uh, two major establishments that happened just yesterday. We had the battle for Harris Estate, which was pretty exciting. If you haven't had the opportunity to catch up on that, um, TTMJ was tasked with defending the Harris Estate after Benjamin sent a syndicate force to attack it with the objective to capture um, Baron Cecilia Harris's father and eliminate everyone else that was there. What I don't think Ben realized was that the community around this estate was in the hundreds of people as opposed to just one family. So it was more than just a household. So Ben had good intentions, of course. He leaked out details on the syndicate attack to Cecilia so that she could warn her father and build up a defense. Um, and when that force was to arrive, TTMJ did answer the call and met her there at the dam. And it turned into a really big engagement. Commander Kurt Austin was able to arrive, and then last minute, Ben brought in some reinforcements. But I'd say it was quite out of control, especially since when Kurt arrived, I had forgot that with him comes a bunch of NPCs that were currently stowed away on his ship. So that was exciting. It drastically scaled up the engagement. And then our other, so yeah, as a result of that, the estate was saved. There were 0 casualties from the families that actually lived there. Just a few security guys, I believe, lost their lives. But TTMJ is now having to decide if he's going to enter a courtship with Cecilia Harris, which will be really interesting. The other development was the Tyrant Thorn, which was with Ramirez. She went to meet with Halos Williams, the leader of the Tyrant Thorn, and give him a beating into submission right in front of his lieutenants for his past failures. Again, you have to remember that Ramirez is playing the enemy. So it's been pretty interesting to see how that plays out and to see her own agenda coming through as opposed to the agenda of our villain. But it was a complete surprise to see that beating did not happen, and I think that ended up being a pretty cool thing. So it definitely catch up on that one. Both of these events take place in the same channel, the custom environment. So it's a pretty good read. The starts of the events are, as usual, are pinned, so you have an easy time jump to the start of them. Other topics I wanted to cover real quick was I'm doing a legacy update. Basically, what this means is if you are currently carrying a unique item that once upon a time belonged to a syndicate general that was killed off, or other similar item that belonged to somebody, if you communicate to me and you sell it at its current value, I will go ahead and update it as a legacy item, complete with the diamond in the description and everything. I'll still increase the description to fill up the whole block to really describe what it does and who had it and what kind of combat it's seen if applicable. And then you'll repurchase it at the legacy price, which is generally 50,000. Because you have to remember at the time that these syndicate items were coming out, um, what we considered expensive on the diamond market was about 5 to 7,000 diamonds. And so now we've replaced that with 50,000, simply because the diamond value has inflated. And if you want your item to become that valuable, you'll have to sell it and repurchase it, which will increase your assets. So there's that to consider. It's a completely optional thing. If you don't do it, the max value will go up, but its current value will stay where it is, which will make your item look like it's on sale. And so if you ever do decide to sell it, you will not profit from it. Um, and then lastly, prismatic vehicles are now available. So those are the Advocate, the Vindicator, and the Avenger, which are the three lore-friendly um, vehicles, all created by the same manufacturer that does the Canon Imperial ground technology. So those are now available. You just have to have the reputation requirements, which is hidden away. Um, but I will tell you, just so you know, that the Advocator is 10,000 reputation. So once you've hit that 10,000 mark, you can talk to Cecilia or eventually the Duke to get your own vehicle unlocked. You'll still have to purchase it, and it is a very expensive item, and it just scales up from the Advocator. And I believe that covers the news for the Branch of Mind.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And I want to keep the follow-up section rather short today, but nevertheless, there is follow-up that I want to go through. First of all, Techie, is there already a date for the side expedition?
Not yet. I have to look on my calendar and then everyone else's calendar too. And I still have to map the entire route and look which nebulas or destinations we can visit on the way.
So I guess basically everybody who is interested in the expedition should keep their eye on our side channels, and there will be more information on selecting a date as well as what the road will be.
Exactly.
That's lovely. Then there was the Drew Wager event you mentioned, which I'm also hyped for myself. I will add the link to the official announcement on Drew Wager's website to the show notes, so you can look it up there. I think the gist of it is that it will be a weekly format at 2000 hours UTC or game time, and there will be one station every week featuring a part of the elite lore, as far as I understand.
Exactly.
So I'm happy that we have an interested in participating there, and eager to find out how that will work out. Then there's Kevin for Mind. I saw you started using. We had some great roleplay last night, and you changed your format in the lore progression achieved thing. Would you mind talking about that quickly?
Sure.
And because I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, so this really is kind of how I go through my head notes. Whenever you go through an event and I post lore progression achieved, that really does mean something. It's not what I was using to just say an event ended, so we can change the subject. That was just me notifying you that what you did actually matters, because this isn't a game where the story is railroaded. Um, it's our roleplay story has, the fact that it is DM'd means that you can completely change the course of the story, which happens almost every event. Um, sure, I've got loose guidelines and places where I know where I want it to go, but there is a tremendous amount of freedom with how that happens and what comes out of it. That's improv, and I think it becomes a little bit easier now that I am showing the results of the session so that people can get a better idea of what kind of things they are impacting. Sometimes things that you didn't think would even matter, like maybe the results of the consequences of it are not immediate, but they will come into play later down the season. Um, and I think that's just really important to communicate. And so I've decided to start showing those after the lore progression achieved. Um, so read that. You can use it as a recap of what happened. But that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to communicate to you that you should be free to try new things and experiment, and also plot ideas. And you can communicate to me what your end goal is, in case I miss it. Um, but I mean that it'll always be a struggle to get your agenda to go through. Because there are a lot of surprises and a lot of things you don't know about, and the angles of every NPC to consider as well, because those are not always as obvious as they may appear. But look through the ones I've created so far with the 2 events that happened yesterday, and kind of get an idea of really some of the things particularly you wouldn't expect as a result. So I hope that's helpful for people in the future.
I think it really is, and it is a great way to underline further that things really had an impact, and in what kind of areas, what the actual PlayStation did affect. So that's a cool thing. I really like that.
I'll just bring out one quick example. The dam did not get destroyed during the Harris Estate battle, and that's an important thing that could be very easy to miss because the story really moved away from that. But that is definitely something I had prepared and anticipated, which would have destroyed the Harris Estate. But TTMJ happened to linger on the dam a little too long, asking Cecilia questions, and that part of the battle took longer than I anticipated, and the troops that were there to destroy the dam ended up arriving before T had left. And so they were able to deal with that situation as opposed to having to go back up there when realizing the dam was being attacked. So that's just one example of something that was a little bit left field. Oh, and I'll go ahead and throw you one more. The 9 elite members of the can't even pronounce the Neptism's Reaver cult were eliminated. We've never discussed the Reavers before. I have had them in mind. But they might be a thing in the future. They might be something to be concerned with. And so I have made it very clear in those footnotes that this is a thing that exists, and you might want to consider it as a threat. That way you don't just forget about them and say, yeah, those guys are just some heavy, powerful dudes. No, there might be some more of them, and there might be a story there waiting to happen.
Very well. So thank you for this. And unless, do you have any last thoughts about branch use that you want to bring up?
I don't.
In this case, we will move on. Now, today is a special day because we have a guest, and I realized that, or I had the idea to prepare some kind of special sound intro for our section, but I didn't really get around to it. So I think we'll roll the prismatic discussion intro, but I will still ask the audience to keep quiet for a little while we talk and introduce our guest. So let's roll it.
Prismatic discussion. Prismatic discussion.
Well.
Prismatic discussion.
All right.
I hope I get to hear that twice today.
No.
So today I am very happy to announce that we have our guest, Captain James T. Flint. He is a Seraphim at the Ashling's Angels. That is their leader section. So I'm very, very honored and glad to have you here, Captain James Flint.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
So for those who are unfamiliar with you and the Angels, tell us a little bit about how you spend your time in the galaxy and what your position in the Angels is.
The Angels, they are a wonderful, wonderful, welcoming and friendly group. If you're Imperial, we pride ourselves on helping teach and mentor newer players that are not as familiar with the game. They're trying to get into the game. They're playing alone. We do a lot of recruiting. Most of our higher ranks, if we see anyone flying in any system that isn't pledged to the Federation without a squadron, we'll reach out and say hello, ask them if they're looking for a squadron. Our goal is to be more. We don't have any requirements to be a member other than enjoying the game. There's no obligation to partake or participate. You can get a rank, you can hang out, and you can listen and learn, ask questions, add your information to the list if you'd like. So we're very proud to welcome in newer members. We have. Last I checked, we're going on, I think, 450 members. That's absolutely not 450 active members, but still a good number that we like to use. And I've primarily been in my Elite Dangerous career a combat pilot. I have not done enough exploration because I get an itchy trigger finger, if you will. And I have an extremely, very much an addiction to the engineering grind. It can be painful and terrible, but the end result is fascinating to me. I have spreadsheets, pages of spreadsheets of tests and calculations and guesstimations, just trying to make the most sense of so many things that the game doesn't tell you. So PvE combat is my primary activities, but I do very much enjoy some PvE piracy, and just generic background simulation work for the squad.
That's very amazing record. So you are also a Seraphim in the Angels leadership, and your area of expertise is combat and engineering, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have a very limited ranking structure, everything from guest to an entry-level angel to a full-fledged angel, and then we have a choir of archangels, which are the experience, the mentors. We call them purple pants. We give them a purple name so that anyone knows if they're getting info from a purple pants, they can trust it. They know it's good info. It's a reliable source.
Don't trust our purples.
Thank you for the warning. I appreciate the heads up. And then there are four of us in the Seraphim, the Heavenly Council that we are called, that each specialize in different aspects. We have Andalin, who is extremely prominent in power play and undermining, and we have the legendary Bitter Whaler, who handles our BGS team like a champ. He is kind enough. He has one other member that works hand in hand with him daily. We post daily BGS goals for local options for people that are in the system to help the Angels, and we also provide some support options for not local factions, for allies of ours that are in need of a hand or some assistance. That they have a war, for example, that we will send out some of our angels to help support. So we like to provide options that can help with BGS to earn your ranks, to rank up to a full-fledged angel. But it's not required. You can hang out with us all you want. We're a good friendly group.
Very nice. And I guess most people already at least have heard of the Angels, even if they listen or are part of our own group. And they probably know you indirectly, at least, because your home system is Chona, which is probably the data trader, material trader system of choice for many around QBO.
Yes, I actually found Chona before I had found the Angels. I was trying to find a good home base that had convenience for all of the data mat traders, and also convenience to the station from the drop point, and so it's less than 80 light seconds from the main star. And all of the other data mat traders are within 25 light years, and all of those starports are within 100 light seconds of the drop. So it's a very, very convenient home base for the engineering grind.
And there is the keyword engineering again, because there is a very big reason why I'm so delighted to have you here, and what also motivated me to invite you to our Congress. And that is that you started a YouTube channel back in October. So what is your YouTube channel? Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much. Yes, I had no idea that it would be even remotely popular, have any attention whatsoever. But it's called I call it Flintlock Engineering, and my main goal, as I mentioned, was to be lazy. We have a channel in our Discord that is strictly for the engineering database discussion. Um, that's the only channel out of all of the Discord servers I'm in that I have set to ping the computer, my cell phone, my watch at any time. If anyone has a question, I want to make sure that I can get them an answer. They're not sitting and waiting at an engineer unsure on what direction to go. And so I eventually decided, if I made some videos, if I made some content, maybe I could send them a link one day instead of having to write 3 to 5 paragraphs for some of these complicated questions. Um, so far, it's been coming along very well. Real life has slowed me down since the holidays, but I have finally gotten back into some script writing for the next 2 episodes that I have left to finish. My first series has been focusing on all of the different hard points. Because there are a great many things in the engineering realm, especially when it comes to weaponry and hardpoints, that the game doesn't tell you. It uses vague expressions like changes a portion or changes most or changes some of your damage type to A or B. And so I really wanted to provide a good resource that people could look up. And you don't want to listen to somebody ramble for 20 minutes when you have one question that you hope they will answer. So I have created multiple videos split up into modifications and then into experimental effects. And I feel like maybe I'm selling myself short by putting timestamps in my description so that they can ignore my first 10 minutes and just watch the 30 seconds that they're interested in. But when I began my engineering grind, I wish that I had a library that I could to check out to save myself the time. Because I have too many. I have 120 units in storage that are all grade 5 engineered, and I would say 105 of those are different weapons from just testing over the last year or two. So I want to save someone else that headache and the materials to try these things out. So I'm hoping that it's going to be a useful library in the future. And I'm looking to continue working on core internals and optional internals. But the weaponry was going to be the most time consuming as far as testing goes. So I'm hoping that will it'll all be downhill and easier from here.
It's very, very lovely. I have shared your channel over in our resources channel a while ago because I really enjoy how you look at all these mods and try to look at them from a very objective perspective and consider all the possibilities how you could use them. And you've kind of already answered what would have been my next question in terms of your motivation. At this point, I have to quickly give credits to our dear Knight Barefeet, who actually used to be an angel before, and who helped me prepare this interview and the questions we are going through. So big shout out there. He is unfortunately not available right now to be here as well. But yeah, you already kind of answered your motivation to do your YouTube channel. In essence, I understand you really thought there was not the perfect resource you would have wished you had when you started out on your own, and you decided to address this issue on your own and do it yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, I think very dearly of Commander Barefeet. He was one of the first angels that I ever interacted with back when I first joined up with him. Very welcoming, very friendly, very knowledgeable. Um, very knowledgeable guy. And there are some wonderful resources. There are some wonderful content creators. I have extreme respect for someone like Down to Earth Astronomy, who delves into the algebra and the calculus that involves many of these aspects. And you have, Commander Exegius, who is quick and to the point. But there were several instances that I needed to know a question, and after an hour of scouring the internet and watching 5 of their videos, there were questions that weren't answered. So I hoped to try and answer some of the niche questions that they just didn't cover, or I overlooked in my pursuits, just to have a regional source.
Very lovely. Of course, I will put a link to your YouTube channel in the show notes, so everybody watching this on YouTube and Hindsight can absolutely check it out and give you that sub and thumbs up on your videos. I can really recommend it. And of course, you are also great. I hope you will get some more views on that and join these other sources that you mentioned, because it really is great quality content, in my opinion.
Thank you very much.
So let's shift a little bit from you and your channel over to the area of your expertise, which is engineering. So for a lot of new commanders, the galaxy itself can seem a pretty daunting place at first, and engineering probably the most daunting of all. So what is your advice to new commanders or commanders new to engineering on the best way to get over that hump and start looking at engineering?
Um, it's that specifically is something that I have extremely limited experience in, as I've only unlocked each engineer once, a very long time ago. It's extremely daunting. The list is massive, and that is actually something that I have struggled with in the squadron. When people ask, where should I start? Who should I get started with? And they've been playing for, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and they've heard these legendary things that you can perform with engineering. And my advice is to enjoy the game. Don't limit yourself. Kind of go outside of your comfort zone. If you're not comfortable with combat, find a wingmate that is extremely comfortable and tag along with them. But to get your feet wet in exploration and combat, and don't turn it into a job. Don't make it a chore, because it will turn you off from engineering, and it may turn you off from the game. Um, there are several things that have extremely time consuming goals to reach, such as one engineer requires you to travel 5,000 light years from your starting system. And
Oh gosh, I hated that one.
that's a tough one. That's a tough one, because I myself am not an explorer. And so I had to force myself to do it. And I think I watched about 5 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation just to keep my sanity on that long trip there and back. Um, and it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I didn't continue my engineering grind for a few weeks. So it's hard to say let it come naturally, but if you try and start engineering too early in the game, it will turn every aspect into the game into a grind, and that's the first way to turn yourself off from elite. So, squadrons, no matter who they are a great asset to have the experienced players that they will run over to the market and they will pick up 10 of your 50 commodities for this engineer, so that you don't have to make 5 trips. Um, there are little shortcuts that people that have experience can help you with. Um, whether it's having your back in combat or running errands for you like that. But to try and do it in one sitting, to try and focus on it and do it all at once can ruin the glory that's at the end of the tunnel there. So to space it out is I think the best advice that I can give. To not look at an engineer at the bottom of the list and write down all the things to get to that person. You won't get there, and you'll be unhappy when you do.
One step at a time, basically. Yeah, it's also an impression I have that you kind of work through your problems in quotes one at a time. So usually when people start out, their first interest is credits, and it's fine not to worry about engineering at all while you're still in that phase of the game, basically.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What would you say is the most common mistake you see with commanders that try to design and engineer ships?
That's a beautiful question. I think, other than the infamous multi-servos, I think that I try to be very impartial with all of the different weapons and modifications that you can do. I try very hard to refrain my squad mates from sharing build links when someone says, "What should I do for this?" I feel that a discussion is going to get them further in the game than copying and pasting someone else's ship model, build, engineering. Um, every commander pilots differently. Every commander has different personal preferences. So for you to tell me that an FDL with 4 railguns and a huge plasma accelerator is the best thing that I can fly, that's I'm going to shoot that down. That's not true. In fact, I am so against the meta that I've been playing Elite for over 3 years now, and I have never once, even for an instant, owned or flown an FDL. I have no interest in the meta. I want to do my thing, and I feel like it wouldn't be so meta if so many people didn't copy and paste. It's the mindset of giving a man a fish or teaching a man to fish. And if someone wants to explore and you send them a link for a 50 light year anaconda with a little bit of engineering, and they copy that to the T, they're going to get halfway across the galaxy before they overlooked the AFMU or they forgot their SRV. And so providing knowledge so that they can come to what's best for them as a solution is my recommendation. Don't ask for builds, ask for opinions, and sample multiple people, because there are. I'm not a multi-cannon fan as well. Too many people say throw a bunch of multi-cannons, throw incendiary rounds on there, but I don't enjoy those. It's too vanilla. If everyone else is using it, it's not going to be fun. It's not. It might not work for you. You might not enjoy it. So I followed that mold when I first got started. I was told to ignore cannons, that they were useless, and you'd be hard pressed to find a ship in my fleet right now that doesn't have a cannon attached to it. They are my preferred hard point, and they're the answer to everything, as far as I'm concerned. If you want me to be biased, cannons are the answer to everything.
That's a really great sentiment. It reminds me a lot of shortly after I joined the Prismatic Imperium, our very own Lord Untamed Zero. When I asked him what recommendations he has for a combat cutter, he said the thing that stuck in my mind. The combat cutter is like a Jedi lightsaber. You have to build it your own. There is no build links for that.
Ooh,
And
I
I
like
think
that.
that is a really great quote and kind of reflects the sentiment that you wanted to communicate there. So I really like that.
I remember what people had to say when our NPC Spencer Isaac first showed up in the game during a cinematic while everyone was driving around in SRVs, and he shows up and bombs another player's ship using all plasma accelerators. And he had one mining laser for cinematic purposes so he could drill into a cutter without destroying it. Yeah, that cinematic went off so well, but boy was it absolutely horrendous using all plasma accelerators in a fertile lands. Temperatures were in the hundreds.
So my next question would be, how would you describe your process of designing and eventually engineering a ship? What is good practice to do in your opinion?
I like to ask first when there are many people that will post a Coriolis link into our engineering database and say, "What do you think?" And there is nothing that I can say that will be beneficial at that point. I have to ask, I have to push a little further and say, well, what are you using it for? You need to think about what that ship's purpose will be. I struggled when I first began. I flew solo for 8 or 9 months in open before I ever spoke or interacted with another commander. So I wasted a lot of time and mats on things I should have known if I had been in a squadron. Um, but it's all about what you're using it for. If you're going to bring nothing but rail guns, that's not gonna go over very well for a high intensity conflict zone. You're going to run out of ammo between each conflict zone. You're wasting time and efficiency going back to restock, or more importantly, you're wasting valuable mats on synthesis instead of engineering. I am an avid hatred. I have a very big hatred of synthesis. It is cancer. I won't do it. Use those mats for something permanent. But it's more about your personal preference. If you want your engagement for weaponry per se to speed through a conflict zone and wrap it up fast, then you might prefer frag cannons. But if you want to clear conflict zone after conflict zone after conflict zone without having to synthesize and restock, you're going to want to focus more on your energy weapons, or even things with plasma slug. So it's more about your purpose than to um, it's more about the end game, I think, so to speak. And some people have the preference to speed things along, and they can run back and restock. And there's some logic that your conflict zones might last 12 minutes instead of 16, and you spend 4 minutes going to restock. But everybody's different. So when someone tells you to run A, B, and C, you might absolutely get your hull ripped in half because it's not your flying style. It's what makes you happy while you fly. If it feels like a chore, if you're getting irritated because you can't keep something in your line of sights, then maybe you don't need fixed plasmas. Maybe you need gimbaled bursts.
I think a big takeaway from this is that it is completely underrated how big of an impact it has to find out what your own style really is and what you are good at and what you are looking to do with any particular ship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I feel that many people use Coriolis, and they only look at the numbers. They don't think about perhaps maybe your time to depletion for your distributor is only 3 seconds, but you're going to have perhaps 3 fire groups. So it's always wonderful to disable different weapons per your fire group setting. To help you eyeball there. So someone could pass on a extremely low time to depletion build because it's extremely low, and not think, I'm not going to be using these 2 railguns until the shields go down, and then I won't be using the beams. And the same goes with mass and speed. Too many people seem to think that speed is the most important factor. But if you've got a boost speed of 642 in an Imperial Clipper, but you've got 3,000 points in your hull, that speed's going to be wonderful, but you're going to need about 2.5 boosts to turn around and get your momentum back in the direction you flipped towards. So you might want to be more of a shield tank and less of a hull tank. You can sacrifice some hull points if you're fast enough and nimble enough to get out of trouble. There are so many variants that you just can't quantify into a number or on paper, and sharing links can overlook those important aspects that you're not thinking about when you yourself are piecing it together piece by piece.
You mentioned Coriolis as a very helpful tool there. So any other tools that you would like to shout out to that are great recommendations for people who want to do ship builds or engineering related stuff?
Yes, I don't use a lot of third-party options. I'm very old-fashioned. In fact, when I first engineered my mothership of all cutters, the pencil and paper was my preferred method. It gave me time to stop and think rather than tab out, read a couple of numbers, and move back. But EDMC, Elite Dangerous Market Connector, is a wonderful tool that will synchronize your game and your mats to Inara, which is probably the only other main website that I live in, to help you peruse the different modifications and experimental effects. But if you try and automate too much, you're going to overlook things. You'll miss things. You'll miss out on things that you might stumble across when you're doing some of the manual research, if you will.
Very nice. Now, I want to open this up in a little bit for questions from our audience, and I also have some additional questions that I can bring up. But to make things a little loose and special right now, I would like to go into a quick lightning round of very short questions that I would be interested to hear answer on.
Okay,
So,
all right.
everyone else can use the time to think of questions they would like to ask Captain Flint, but let's go for the quick round. Now, first question, which ship has the best Class 8 hardpoint, and why is the answer the cutter?
Because it's Gudamaya. That is the answer.
At this point, a great reference to your Christmas special video. I'll also put the link to that in the description, but it was a great way where you actually did also very entertaining and comedic content.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. I wanted to change the pace a little bit so that it wasn't just a humdrum and listening to my boring voice as I rambled. I enjoyed that one very much. And I have to give a shout out to Commander Burr and his Burboons at the Burr Pit. When I asked for volunteers to hop into a Sidewinder and get murdered frequently, they all jumped at the chance. It was, I appreciated very much. And I will also say that if you looked on some of the threat counters on systems that are in high danger of PvP activity, his little system jumped up to above the Colonia griefing amount because I ran over so many Sidewinders and Eagles that day.
Wow.
That's
question.
that's a pretty high number. I'm not going to lie. I live in Colonia, so trust me, I know that.
Next question, would the Clipper be better as an MPAT ship?
As a what ship? I'm sorry?
As an MPAT ship.
A medium.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The wingspan is way too far. You've got two separate zip codes for two different hardpoints. Yes, it would.
Feels like it would be the perfect MPAT ship, but unfortunately can only land at larges.
That's right. Give it a 45-degree angle turn and you can fit on that pad, no problem.
Next question, shield tank or hull tank?
Shield tank all the way. Hull does not come back until you dock. Shields will always come back.
Which makes for a great follow-up question. Prismatic or Biweave?
Biweave, biweave, biweave.
What about the Asp Scout? Is it a useless ship or is it the most useless ship in the game?
I can't say. I've never bothered to fly it. That might answer your question.
What is your favorite engineer to visit?
Oh, absolutely, the Sarge. He's my go-to guy for cannons.
Because you're right, cannons fix everything. That's what
That's
we learned
right.
today. Remote engineering or visiting the engineer's workshop?
Yes, I think if you pin your blueprints properly, you will only need to visit for experimental effects on the top priority when you're working on a project in the field. I am a huge advocate for planning ahead your pins before you visited any engineers.
Unlocking Colonia engineers, is it worth the trip?
You know what? I don't know. I'm so non-exploration focused that I have been planning since they announced fleet carriers to take a bunch of the squad guys with me. So that's going to be my first expedition to Colonia once those carriers come out, is to bring 15 other guys with me if they can fit, and we will go and pin them out there. But I genuinely wish I had a few extra pins. So yes, eventually, yes.
Might I take away from your answer that you're perfectly fine if you don't bother too much about Colonia engineers?
You don't need it. If you're obsessed with engineering, it's good to do after you've done everyone else, primarily the FSD engineers, and the Guardian FSD booster will make your life a little easier too.
What would you say is the most underused blueprint or special effect?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Some kind of secret top-notch tip that you'd recommend everybody to check out?
That's a hard one to lock down. I can tell you the inverse of that question. I think phasing sequence is overrated, but if you put phasing sequence on 2 or 3 cyto scramblers, it will change your life, I think. I'm a big advocate for thermal vent, but there's no point in running thermal vent on an efficient beam. So I would say thermal vent on a long range modded weapon would probably be the top secret to extend your time to depletion for your laser based loadouts.
What's your favorite blueprint?
Force shell with cannons, absolutely.
You think you could introduce me to the Sarge?
I'll put in a good word for you, absolutely.
Thanks.
What's the worst blueprint, or the one you like the least?
Multi-servos. It gives you the same benefits as oversized, but has more of a penalty. With laser weapons, you have a slightly higher distributor draw. With multi-cannons, you use more ammo to achieve the same effect as oversized. I hate multi-servos. The only thing that it could be slightly okay on are power play modules.
Now I have 3 more selection questions. EDSY or Coriolis?
Coriolis.
EDMC, ED Discovery, or EDDI?
EDDB.
As the way, okay. And I guess you answered the last one already. ED Engineer or Inara?
Inara.
All right. So, time to open this up. Anybody in the audience who has a great question that they want to ask Captain Flint?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead.
So, if you remember the good old times where when you picked up a meteor, it didn't multiply to 3 but was just 1.
No.
That was the time I started to engineer. And
No.
before they implemented the thing where you get 3 for picking up 1, I already engineered 6 ships to grade 5. Am I crazy or not?
No, you're crazy.
I wouldn't say crazy. I would say dedicated. You're very dedicated.
Thanks.
I call that about as crazy as flying out to Colonia.
You have no idea. You're just sitting in a bureau and writing lies.
I feel called out.
Gene, go back to mute. Our Colonia guy is about to get on to me.
Where's your credit count now, Techie?
15 billion.
Sweet. I have a follow-up question
I didn't
based.
only grind for materials, but also for money. Sorry.
I have a follow-up question based on that one lighting question about prismatics or bioweaves. Captain Flint, what would you say is parameters to consider when picking what type of shields you want to use?
Whether depending on your usage for the ship, bioweaves will get you longevity. Prismatics will get you top tier ahead of the game when it comes to 1v1 for PvE for some depending on the ship, some PvE and assassination missions. There's no reason to run a bioweave if you're heading out to kill 1 or 2 guys and then heading back home. But in most cases, on most ships, you will eventually have more total cumulative megajoules by running a bioweave than you would from a prismatic, just due to the abysmal recharge rate. Plus, the extra weight from prismatics might not slow your top speed down, but it will add a substantial amount of drift, especially when you put it on the cutter, which already has about 2 galaxies worth of drift.
Wow.
We measure our drifts in galaxies now.
Yes.
In the Gudamaya, that's what the G is for, yep.
With the cutter, you can actually drift towards the Magellan clouds.
That's correct.
Another question I have noted here is, if you couldn't only have one on a ship, are concordant or region beams more effective? And what would you say about these?
Oh, if I was limited to just one, I think Concordant would probably be the safe bet, giving the benefit of the doubt to your wingman's ability to at least get out of the line of fire for a few seconds.
And yeah,
I like to keep at least one source of regen or concordance on most of my loadouts. I often end up taking out a younger or a more fresh member, so I like to have a good track record of not coming back home without one of my wingmates. So the regeneration sequence is wonderful, and I prefer it for wingmates in smaller ships, slower ships, to counteract constant incoming damage. But the bringing one concordance is never a bad thing. But you never need more than one, as it does not stack in any shape or form.
and they are, as you say, great for wing flying and also mentoring. We like to call them friendship lasers in our voice chat when we fly together.
I like that.
One topic I think we should also scratch, which is probably pretty big, but that is the impact of engineering on the game. What would you say is your stance there? There are people that say they call engineering as OP, overpowered for what it does. What do you say are pros and cons of how engineering is as it is in the game?
I think I think it can be considered OP, especially to the earlier members, the newcomers. But I almost can relate it to if anyone is familiar with World of Warcraft, with you having the ability to get up to level 50, and then over time they've added the ability to go to 60, 70, 80, 90. And so I feel that with the addition of engineering, it adds that extra ceiling to increase further than what your credits could get you without it. It's a different tier, but it can be extremely unfair for a new member in an ASP scout to come across a prismatic FDL with 5 frag cannons.
Would a new member be flying an ASP scout? You'd have to be crazy to be flying that thing.
If they weren't in a squadron and didn't know better, they might be.
I suppose it is larger than the ASP Explorer, so it might look like a good plus side.
True. I love that one little engine on the back because it's very easy to target with cannons.
So earlier you said you really enjoy PvE piracy. What would you say your favorite method for finding and, more importantly, looting those juicy T9s loaded up with them low temp diamonds?
Well, we're going to want agriculture economy. A refinery state, a secondary economy state is also going to be beneficial, and the highest population that you can find. But if you can get all of those in an anarchy system, that will make your life so much easier. And with not so much engineering, but power play modules can actually help the convenience sake when it comes to getting those pesky ships to stop drifting. As a pirate, I absolutely have to use cannons in my piracy methods. So I use a high yield shell on my cannons to disable thrusters. Not so much that it has the internal module damage, because thrusters do also qualify as an external module, but because it lowers the damage that is done to hull. So I can get off another extra volley or two without killing the target. But the biggest problem that I first ran into when I began, I was pirating in my cutter. So when you click that FA off button and boost past them and flip to stop them in their tracks, you want them to collide into you and come to a halt. If anything runs into the cutter that doesn't have engines, it's going to die. I had a very difficult time keeping those ships alive and stopping them at the same time. So bringing repair limits helps with that. But the Enforcer cannon that you can get in the Power Play module shopping spree. It has a tiny bit of the force shell effect that you can find and apply on cannons, and it does very little damage. So once their shields come up, you can use that, and they're fixed, so that you can find their center point of gravity and their drift, and whittle down their speed a few meters a second per shot. And it's much safer than trying to have them collide into a cutter to come to a safe and slow stop.
That is absolutely hilarious. A pirate that has to send out repair limpets to the ship they're pirating from.
All right, we have hit an hour, and I would like to wrap this up, but I want to close this with 2 more questions. The first one, anything you can tell us about the future of your channel? What can we expect?
Well, I've got a list of directions that I'd like to go, but I have not decided if I'm going to focus on core internal engineering first or optional internal engineering. But I want to deviate a little bit from the engineering aspect, and I would like to have an episode or multiple episodes focused on the different Power Play modules. I've taken the lap, and I've got a half a dozen to a dozen or upwards of 20 when it comes to pack hounds of all of the different modules that you can get across the Power Play pledges. And because there were some questions that I couldn't find across the internet, I needed to know. So I think that may be an option down the road, which is why I mentioned that multi-servos can be acceptable on those Power Play modules that have an inherent experimental effect. Perhaps you might want a little bit higher rate of fire for the pulse disruptors to increase the chance of malfunctioning a module, if you will. But that is eventually maybe a deviation from the engineering aspect, and maybe even branching into the human tech and the Guardian tech weapons as well. But I'm finally back on track getting some scripting done. I'm hoping to get the Rails and Plasma Accelerator episode into production within the next week to 2 weeks, now that real life has simmered down. But I'm open to any other suggestions that people might have. I'm honestly a little bit I'm thrilled for Commander Exegius's new website launch, but I'm also a little concerned that he may be covering some of the bases I may be preparing to. So I'm going to keep an eye on that so that I don't get redundant there. But I've just been overwhelmed with the respect and appreciation across this community. The Elite Dangerous community is always surprising other communities with how gracious and kind and welcoming they are. And I am absolutely proud and honored to be listed even in the same sentence with some of the legendary content creators that are already out there.
It's great to hear, and I guess you still have enough content left that you could do about episodes about, so I'm not at all worried there. As again, the link to your channel will be in the description below. But other than that, what can people do to support you?
Honestly, just throw some comments. A couple of shares would be great. Commander Burr threw in a thought a while back, and one of his members as well, that I wasn't looking for this to be a source of income. I mean, I don't know anyone who would turn away a source of income, but someone made the case that even if I don't want a Patreon account right now, if one day my channel gets even larger in proportion, I might wish that it was on my older content. So I have started one of those, but in no way am I asking for money. It's just there so that if one day I might be able to quit my day job and do a little more content creation, I won't have to backtrack and update old content. So just a few shares and some kind words go a long way. I enjoy waking up in the morning after a fresh video and finding 10 to 15, 20 comments that are just so complimentary. That encourages me to keep making more.
Very lovely. Captain Flint, it was an honor to have you here on the Congress today. Very pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Pleasure to meet you guys. I've enjoyed chatting, and I'll stick around in the Discord if anybody has questions. I'm always open for pings. I'll get back with what I can, but I have enjoyed it. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you for being here, and thanks to everyone else who is here and everyone who listens to our Congress. was great, and I hope I see you again at the next episode. Yes, see you then.